what is going to happen bad next? Because Afghanistan's a disaster. We've got ships and military activity going off the coast of Ireland. Okay, let's think about this for a moment. NATO conflicted on what to do. A president's inviting Russia in for at least some incursion. And the world is sitting there thinking, what's going to happen next? And the United States sure doesn't seem to be a reliable partner in any of this.
We are literally talking about this not as a joke, but as a potential that they have let out into the media about U.S. troops engaging with Russian forces. I mean, has the world fallen that far under this kind of leadership that quickly?
The only time you really deploy troops is if you're willing to start a shooting war, to go there and to fight. Those 50,000 troops are not going to be a deterrent to Putin's aggression if he thinks that Joe Biden ultimately is not serious and is not going to do anything.
We could be looking at 1,000 to 5,000 U.S. troops and then maybe up 10 times that, tenfold, so up to 50,000. I mean, to justify that kind of U.S. troop movement, you would think the president and his entire team would be out there selling this to the American people about why are we putting our men and women potentially in harm's way when we haven't armed the Ukrainians the way we could have.
One wrong move again, Andy, could have devastating consequences.
It could be a powder keg, and I'm very serious. I'm not meaning this to be an alarmist, but when you're sending United States troops to Eastern Europe and you've got Russia on one side and the United States and troops on the other and the Ukraine in the middle, it reminds me of a very bad thing that happened in the Middle East, and that is war.
If you're going to start deploying mass amounts of U.S. troops, that's even in your mind, 50,000 troops to Europe, you've got to explain it to the American people. You got to explain it to those troops. They haven't, as of Friday, it was economic sanctions and minor incursions. Now it's up to 50,000 U.S. troops in harm's way.
Getting into a military shooting war with Russia would be catastrophic, okay? I mean, catastrophic. But here's what Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, said. This is what Antony Blinken said yesterday.
If a single additional Russian force goes into Ukraine in an aggressive way, as I said, that would trigger a swift, a severe, and a united response from us and from Europe. We're prepared with Europe for a swift, and calibrated and very united response. We're looking at every single scenario, preparing for every single one.
Except that's not true. We already know that there's not going to be a united response, even within NATO, from Europe in this. George's been talking about that. That's the problem with this, is like history repeating itself.
History repeating itself in a devastating way. Look, the United States is on the run. That is a terrible statement for me to have to make in the year 2022. The United States of America is scared and on the run.
We had this week of non-diplomacy, which is what it was, Andy, non-diplomacy. They tried these discussions. They said it was not negotiations. So Putin is flexing his muscles in an incredible way. And NATO is now totally helpless, it sounds like. I mean, or totally disorganized. It's exactly what, unfortunately, President Biden said last week. NATO was conflicted. Rick, that's what it sounds like.
This is exactly what Putin wants, is to weaken NATO, and he is successfully doing it, sadly. I don't see how anyone can say that the Joe Biden administration on their foreign policy knows what they're doing.
You have served at the UN for 10 years. You have been our ambassador to Germany, a G7 country. You have served as director of national intelligence. You are now our senior advisor on global affairs. Let me ask you this question. What kind of point are we at right now? What's the danger point right now?
The danger point is that powers like China and Russia are smelling weakness, that they're going to move on other areas, and that our friends and allies are going to have to face the music of tilting towards Russia or China and away from the United States. This is going to be economically disastrous as well as national security chaos.
Very tenuous, very dangerous situation right now in Europe. I mean, unbelievably so over the weekend. And then, of course, you add UAE to it, as Rick mentioned. Ireland facing Russian military action in what's considered a military exercise, but in their economic zone, as Professor Hutchison said. That causes economic concern for Ireland. All this is taking place simultaneously, George. It's unbelievable.
Yes, and it
catastrophic failure of negotiations and diplomacy.
And of this administration, I mean, it's just whether it's domestic failures at home or foreign policy failures abroad. They just keep adding up, and it's like, how much more can the world take? How much more can Americans take? I mean, think about those young troops who are being deployed right now. Not even sure what they're being deployed for.